My friends, as with any form of art, it's hard to classify what's a mistake in audio. Because for every instance that someone claims something's wrong, there's somebody that you can find that's doing the exact same thing and making it sound perfect. Well, there's a caveat to all this, and it's usually that you're dealing with extremely trained professionals. And if you aren't at that level, you might not know when to break the rules. And you always have to know the rules to be able to break them the right way. Well, by the end of this video, you'll know the top 5 issues that most mixers have to struggle with. So what's happening, fam? Miami here with JST, and if nothing else, I want to help you avoid the mistakes that I made early on. I'll be doing a breakdown in this video and then doing a deep dive into each one of the subjects to help you make sure you never fall into these terrible habits again. But let's get right into this with our first topic. One of the biggest ones, not listening on different audio systems. So we're gonna hop right into this. Like I said, it can be confusing because if you reference something and it sounds pretty close, why would you need to listen elsewhere? Well, audio mixing is subjective, and it's easy to get used to a certain sound on a particular set of speakers or headphones. Not listening critically on different playback systems like studio monitors and headphones, it can result in a mix that sounds good on one source but may not translate well to other playback systems. So it's important to listen to the mix on as many speakers as you can to be sure that it sounds good across a bunch of different listening environments. Not everyone's going to be listening on expensive monitors. Let's actually take a listen to a mix and how it sounds coming from different sources. This is going to be simulated, but it'll definitely give you the idea. A well-tuned mix is going to translate across multiple sources, so regardless of the listener, it's pleasing to listen to. Whether you're jogging with your AirPods, or listening to the sub in your car, or watching this on your way to work, in the passenger seat of course, make sure that you hit that sub in your car, and if you are driving, I hope not, but wait until that light is as red as that subscribe button, and hit that like button notification bell as well. My transition game is still on point. But speaking of what used to drive me crazy, onto our next topic, overcompression. As we all know, compression is one of the biggest foundations of mixing next to EQ, but it's also very easy to overdo. If you go too far with it, you can cause a loss of dynamics and make the audio sound squashed or unnatural. People would then refer to it being unmusical to their ears. So you have to make sure that you're hitting your compression levels right to achieve a dynamic mix. Let's take a listen to an appropriate amount of compression versus one that is totally unsuitable for the source. Pay attention to the way that the transient information is being affected here. So did you notice how the life of that song got squashed by being overcompressed? And you have to think, every time that you overcompress a single source, it's gonna stack with other tracks until all of the life is eventually sucked out of that song. And just be super careful, because a pro can tell right away by hearing something's not being compressed right, and the listener can feel it because it starts to lack all of that excitement that comes with a proper dynamic response. I was using one of our bus glue products, which takes the thought of attack and release out of the situation, but hopefully that example showed you how good it can sound when it's done right. If you loved it, click the link in the description below so you can get your hands on it. And on to our next topic, poor EQ decisions. If compression is one of the biggest foundations of mixing, it's only surpassed by EQ, which in my opinion is the most important mixing element, period. It's like 70% of mixing. Even impulse responses are just glorified EQ curves. Same with reverb snapshot captures, dialing in amplifiers, guitar cabinets, headphones, studio monitors. All we care about is EQ. And when it comes to mixing, we want to have a plan when we grab an EQ to make sure the source audio isn't muddy, harsh, or lacking clarity. And I'm about to play an example right now, and I want you to think in your mind what the problem is out of these 3. Is it too much low end, too much of a low mid buildup, or too much high end? Pay attention. If you guessed too much high end, you were correct. And we've diagnosed the issue, and now we're gonna do our best to try and rectify it. Do you see how simple that was and how much better it sounds? In the full episode for this, I'm gonna show you all of the wrong ways that people tend to EQ things. And I promise it's gonna be a fun episode. But on to our next topic, ignoring phase issues. Phase is one of the most important parts of mixing that often gets ignored. And that's interesting because just like EQ and compression, you have to train yourself to recognize when there's an issue. Drum phase and guitar phase are two of the biggest things to watch out for. That goes for in the box as well as when you're mixing amps. With drums, it affects the punchiness of the transient, and with guitars, it really affects the stereo width. It can be the determining factor in whether your rhythm guitars are huge or small, which kind of leads into our next point. But I want to show you a case of how important phase-aligned material can be. The difference that phase can make is up there with EQ for me. And once you understand phase, it can also act as an EQ. As you saw in that example, it can either be frequency reinforcement or frequency cancellation. And both of these can be useful, and I'll explain more in the video that focuses on that in the series. So we're gonna get to the fifth and final mistake that most mixers make: neglecting panning and stereo imaging. Listen to me carefully. Stereo width and depth is what separates the boys from the men, or girls from the women. You know what I'm saying. Forget the novice for a second. It really separates the semi-professional from the actual professional. Neglecting panning or not paying attention to your stereo imaging can kind of cause a mix that sounds narrow or lacks spatial dimension. And that's why we have to use it in a creative and thoughtful way so we can make an immersive feeling stereo image and experience. Take a look at the difference creative panning can make in a song. And that's just the tip of the iceberg, my friends. Can't wait to dig into each one of these topics deeper to further explain ways to avoid bumping into these problems. I wish I could fit it all into one video, but that would be ridiculously hard to do in a reasonable amount of time, and no one's trying to watch a 30-minute YouTube video, you know what I'm saying? Let's go over the top 5 things one more time. Not listening on multiple playback systems, overcompression, poor EQ decisions, ignoring phase issues, and neglecting panning and stereo image. I always love doing these little mini-series videos with you guys, and if you feel like there's another topic that you want me to cover, leave it in the comments below and I'll chat with you fine people like I always do.